The Valorian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their ships were the fastest. Their weapons were the strongest. Their people were beautiful in ways that made other species feel small and ugly. When they walked into a room, everyone stopped talking. When they spoke, everyone listened. This was simply how things were. This was how things had always been. So when humanity finally built ships that could travel between stars, the Valorians were not impressed. They looked at the small, soft creatures from the blue planet and saw nothing special. Humans were weak. Humans were short-lived. Humans had only been in space for a few decades while the Valorians had been conquering worlds for millennia. But the Galactic Council had rules. Any species that achieved faster than light travel earned a seat at the table. So humanity was allowed to join, and the Valorians watched with mild amusement as the newcomers tried to find their place among the stars. Park Do-hun did not care about politics. He did not care about galactic councils or ancient empires or humanity's place in the universe. He cared about engines. He cared about wires and pipes and machines that needed fixing. He was good at his job, and his job was simple. Keep the ship running, stay out of trouble, go home alive. He was 32 years old. He had grown up poor in a small town where opportunities were few. He had worked hard, studied hard, and earned his position as a maintenance engineer on the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Edge. It was not a glamorous job. He spent most of his time in dark corridors, covered in grease and sweat, fixing things that broke. But it paid well, and it kept him far away from the complicated world of human politics. The Horizon's Edge was currently docked at the Valorian capital station. This was supposed to be an honor. Humanity's first official diplomatic mission to the heart of the greatest empire in known space. Important people in expensive clothes walked the upper decks, smiling and shaking hands and pretending to understand alien customs. Do-hun stayed below, where he belonged. On the day everything changed, he was fixing a broken cooling unit in a shared corridor. The corridor connected the human section of the station to the Valorian section. Normally, only diplomats and officials use this path, but the cooling unit had broken down, and someone needed to fix it before the entire ventilation system failed. That someone was Do-hun. He was on his knees, his hands deep inside the machine, when he heard footsteps behind him. They were light and graceful, nothing like the heavy boots of his fellow engineers. He did not turn around. He had learned long ago that the best way to avoid trouble was to focus on his work and let important people pass by without noticing him. But the footsteps stopped right behind him. "What are you doing?" The voice was female. It was soft and musical, like water flowing over stones. Do-hun's hands paused for just a moment, then he continued working. "Fixing the cooling unit, ma'am," he said. "It should be done in about 20 minutes. I apologize for blocking the corridor." "You are human." It was not a question. Do-hun finally looked over his shoulder. She was tall. All Valorians were tall, but she seemed especially so from his position on the floor. Her skin was a pale silver that seemed to glow with its own inner light. As he watched, it shifted to a soft pink color, like the sky at sunset. Her eyes were large and dark, filled with curiosity. She was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. She was also wearing clothes that probably cost more than he would earn in his entire lifetime. Gold and silver threads woven into patterns that moved and changed as she breathed. A small crown of crystal sat upon her flowing white hair. Do-hun knew immediately that this was someone important. Someone very, very important. He got to his feet and bowed deeply. "Yes, ma'am. I am human. My name is Park Do-hun. I am an engineer on the Horizon's Edge." "Engineer," she repeated, tasting the word. "You fix things." "Yes, ma'am." "How fascinating." She walked closer, her eyes moving over his dirty uniform, his rough hands, the tools scattered on the floor. Her skin shifted to a curious orange color. "I have never spoken to a human before, only watched from a distance. You are smaller than I expected." Do-hun did not know what to say to that. He waited. "What is Earth like?" she asked suddenly. "I have seen images, but images do not capture truth. Is it really covered in water? Do you really breathe the gases that come from plants?" "Yes, ma'am. Earth has many oceans. And yes, we breathe oxygen, which plants produce." "Remarkable." Her skin rippled with colors he could not name. "And your machines? They are so crude. No offense intended. But compared to our technology, they seem almost primitive. Yet they work. How do you make them work? Dohan considered the question. We understand them, ma'am. Every part, every connection. When something breaks, we know why it broke and how to fix it. Our technology may be simple, but it is reliable. She laughed. It was a pleasant sound, like small bells ringing. You speak with such confidence. Most species stammer when they talk to me. They sweat and shake and forget their words. But you just talk. I apologize if I have been rude, ma'am. No, no, it is refreshing. She smiled at him, and her skin turned a warm gold. I am Nari, Princess Nari, youngest daughter of Queen Yara, ruler of the Valorian Empire. Dohan felt his stomach drop. He was talking to a princess. He was covered in grease and sweat, kneeling on the floor with his tools, and he was talking to a princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. He bowed again, much deeper this time. I am honored, Your Highness. Please forgive my appearance. I did not expect to meet anyone of importance in this corridor. Your appearance? She looked at him with genuine confusion. What is wrong with your appearance? I am dirty, Your Highness, from my work. Ah, she nodded slowly. You are embarrassed because you have been working. How strange. Among my people there is no shame in labor, only in laziness. She paused, studying him again. I like you, Park Dohan. You are interesting. Before he could respond, she turned and walked away. Her footsteps were silent on the metal floor. At the corner, she looked back at him one more time. I will see you again, she said. It was not a question. It was not a request. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the absolute certainty of someone who had never been told no in her entire life. Then she was gone. Dohan stood there for a long moment, his heart beating fast. Then he shook his head, got back on his knees, and returned to his work. He had a cooling unit to fix. Everything else was above his pay grade. But as he worked, he could not stop thinking about the way she had looked at him, like he was something new and exciting, like he was a puzzle she wanted to solve. He had seen that look before, on the faces of people who saw something they wanted and fully intended to take it. The thought made him very, very nervous. 3 days after their first meeting, Dohan was repairing a water recycler in the lower section of the station when Princess Nari appeared again. He was deep inside a maintenance tunnel, his body twisted into an uncomfortable position, when he heard that same musical voice. I have been looking for you. Dohan nearly dropped his tool. He twisted around and saw her standing at the entrance of the tunnel. Her skin was a happy shade of blue, and she was smiling like she had just won a game. Your Highness, he said, trying to bow while wedged between two pipes. It did not work very well. How did you find me here? I asked your captain where you were. He was very helpful. Dohan made a mental note to avoid his captain for the next few weeks. Is there something I can help you with, Your Highness? Yes. I want to know more about humans, about Earth, about you. She sat down at the entrance of the tunnel, folding her long legs beneath her in a graceful motion. Tell me about your childhood. This was strange. This was very strange. Princesses did not sit on dirty floors and ask engineers about their childhoods. But Dohan did not know how to refuse a royal request, so he talked while he worked. He told her about his small town, about his mother who worked in a factory, about cold winters and hot summers, and the smell of rain on dry earth. Nari listened with complete attention. Her skin changed colors as he spoke, reflecting her emotions. Blue for happiness, orange for curiosity, a soft green when he mentioned his mother. When he finished his repairs, she was still there. That was wonderful, she said. Your life sounds so real, so full of texture. My life has been very different. Everything planned, everything controlled. I have never experienced rain. Never. Our world has climate control. Rain only falls in agricultural zones. She looked down at her hands. Sometimes I wonder what it feels like to be surprised by weather. Dohan did not know what to say. He climbed out of the tunnel and began packing his tools. I should return to the ship, Your Highness. My shift is almost over. Of course. She stood up, smooth and graceful. I will see you tomorrow. She said it like a promise. True to her word, she found him the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. No matter where Do-hun went, Princess Nari seemed to appear. If he was fixing something in the lower sections, she would wander by on an inspection. If he was eating alone in the human cafeteria, she would suddenly decide to experience human food culture. If he was walking through the corridors after his shift, she would accidentally be walking in the same direction. At first, Do-hun was polite. He answered her questions. He showed her how his tools worked. He explained human customs and traditions as best he could. But as the days passed, he began to feel uncomfortable. She never asked if he wanted company. She never asked if he had time to talk. She simply appeared, expecting his attention, and he gave it because she was a princess and he was nobody. The gifts started in the second week. A small box arrived at his quarters containing a piece of jewelry worth more than his yearly salary. The note said it was a token of friendship from the princess. Do-hun stared at it for a long time. Then he carefully packaged it up, wrote a polite refusal, and sent it back. The next day, a larger gift arrived, a device that could translate any language instantly. Again, he sent it back. Then came clothes made from fabric he had never seen before. Then a personal computing device of Valorian design. Then a collection of rare crystals from a distant planet. Each time, Do-hun sent them back with polite notes explaining that he could not accept such generous gifts. Each time new gifts arrived the next day, the other humans on the ship began to notice. Some were jealous. A princess was showering one of their engineers with attention and expensive presents. Why him? What made him so special? Others were worried. They had heard stories about powerful aliens who took an interest in humans. Those stories rarely ended well for the humans involved. Captain Yun called Do-hun into his office. "The princess has requested your presence at a royal function tomorrow night," the captain said. He was a tired man who had spent 20 years in space and had no patience for complications. "This is the third invitation she has sent. The first two you declined. I had work to do, sir. You will always have work to do. That is not the point." The captain leaned forward. "Park Do-hun, do you understand the situation you are in? A princess of the Valorian Empire wants your company. This could be very good for humanity. It could open doors that have been closed to us." Do-hun felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "You want me to go?" "I want you to consider the bigger picture." "And if I do not want to go?" The captain was silent for a moment. "Then you do not have to go. I will not order you, but I hope you will think carefully about what you are refusing." Do-hun thought carefully. He thought about the princess appearing everywhere he went. He thought about the gifts he had not asked for. He thought about the way she looked at him, like he was something interesting to collect. "I respectfully decline the invitation, sir." The captain sighed. "Very well, I will inform the princess." That night, Do-hun lay in his small bed and stared at the ceiling. He wondered if he was making a mistake. The princess was beautiful. She was powerful. She seemed genuinely interested in him. Most people would consider themselves lucky to receive such attention. But Do-hun did not feel lucky. He felt trapped. He had spent his entire life being invisible, being nobody, being safe in his smallness. Now suddenly someone very powerful had noticed him, and he had no idea what she really wanted. On the Valorian side of the station, Princess Nari received news of the declined invitation. Her skin turned a frustrated shade of violet. "He refused again," she said to her handmaid. "Why does he keep refusing?" "Perhaps he is intimidated, Your Highness." "No, he does not act intimidated. He acts careful, like he is afraid of something." Nari paced across her chambers. "I do not understand. I have shown him favor. I have given him gifts. I have spent hours in his company. Among any other species, this would be the highest honor. But he runs from me. Humans are strange creatures, Your Highness." "Yes," Nari agreed. "Yes, they are." Her skin slowly shifted to a determined orange. "But I am patient. He will understand eventually. They all do." She had never failed to get what she wanted. She did not intend to start now. Across the station in the Valorian throne room, High Commander Tay was not happy. "The princess spends too much time with the human," he reported to Queen Yara. "It is becoming noticed. It is becoming talked about. Some say she is lowering herself. Others say worse things." Queen Yara sat on her throne, ancient and powerful, her skin a calm shade of silver that revealed nothing. My daughter is young. Young people have interests that come and go. This interest is not going, Your Majesty. If anything, it is growing stronger. Tay hesitated. Perhaps if you spoke to her. I will observe, the queen said. For now I will observe. But she made a note to look more closely at this human who had captured her daughter's attention. Any creature that could hold Nari's interest for more than a few days was worth examining. Queen Yara had ruled the Valorian Empire for 800 years. She had seen species rise and fall. She had watched stars die and new ones be born. She had made decisions that affected billions of lives, and she had done so without hesitation or regret. In all that time, she had never seen anyone refuse her daughter. She sat in her private chambers, watching the security feeds with growing interest. The human engineer was working in a corridor, his hands busy with some piece of equipment. His face was calm and focused. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. As the queen watched, a young Valorian technician walked by and dropped a container of small parts. The pieces scattered across the floor, and the technician made a sound of frustration. The human immediately stopped his work. He got down on his knees and helped the technician gather the fallen pieces. He smiled at her and said something the queen could not hear. The technician's skin turned pink with gratitude. Then the human returned to his work as if nothing had happened. Queen Yara found this interesting. Among the Valorians, status was everything. A worker of his level would never help someone beneath him. It would be seen as weakness. But this human had helped without thinking, without calculating the social cost. She continued to watch. Over the next few hours, she saw him eat his lunch alone in a corner of the human cafeteria. She saw him read something on a small device, his lips moving slightly as if he were practicing words in another language. She saw him decline 2 more invitations from her daughter's messenger, each time with a polite bow and a respectful refusal. Interesting, the queen said to herself. High Commander Tay entered her chambers and knelt before her. You summoned me, Your Majesty? Tell me about this human, Park Do-hun, everything you have learned. Tay rose and activated a holographic display. Information scrolled across the air in front of them. Park Do-hun, age 32 in human years, born on Earth in a region called Korea, lower economic status. His mother raised him alone after his father left the family when he was young. He worked his way through technical schools with high marks, joined the human space program 6 years ago. No criminal record, no political affiliations, no romantic relationships on file. No romantic relationships. None that we can find, Your Majesty. He appears to keep to himself. His supervisors describe him as quiet, reliable, and skilled. His fellow workers say he is friendly but distant. He does not form close connections easily. The queen considered this. And what do you make of his refusal to accept my daughter's attentions? Tay hesitated. If I may speak freely, Your Majesty? You may. I believe the human is being wise. He knows his place. He knows that a relationship with the princess would bring him nothing but trouble. Perhaps he is smarter than we have given him credit for. Perhaps, the queen tilted her head. Or perhaps there is something else, something we are not seeing. She made a decision. Bring him to me. Tonight. Tell him nothing of why. Tay bowed. As you command, Your Majesty. That evening, 2 Valorian guards appeared at Do-hun's quarters. They were tall and armed and wore the golden uniforms of the royal guard. When they knocked on his door, Do-hun felt his heart stop for a moment. Park Do-hun, one of them said. You will come with us. It was not a request. Do-hun was led through parts of the station he had never seen before. The corridors here were wider, decorated with art and sculpture that made the human areas look shabby and poor. The air smelled different here, sweeter, cleaner. They passed through several checkpoints where guards scanned them with devices Do-hun did not recognize. Each time the guards looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. What was a human doing in the royal section? Finally, they reached a massive door made of some metal that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. The guards stepped aside and the door opened on its own. Beyond was the throne room of the Valorian Empire. Do-hun had seen impressive things in his life. He had watched Earth rise over the horizon of the moon. He had seen nebulas of pink and purple gas stretching across the darkness of space, but nothing had prepared him for this. The room was vast, so large that the far walls disappeared into shadow. The ceiling was made of transparent material, and through it he could see the stars burning cold and bright. The floor was polished to a mirror shine, reflecting everything above and below until Do-hun felt like he was floating in space itself. And at the center of it all, on a throne carved from a single crystal that pulsed with inner light, sat Queen Yara. She was ancient. Do-hun could see it in the way she held herself, in the depth of her eyes, in the silver of her skin that never changed color no matter what she felt. She had lived for centuries. She had seen more than any human could imagine, and now she was looking at him. Do-hun walked forward on shaking legs. He had never been so scared in his life. He was certain that he was about to die. He must have offended the princess somehow. He must have broken some rule he did not know about. This was the end. He stopped at what he hoped was an appropriate distance and fell to his knees. "Your Majesty," his voice was steady, which surprised him. "I am honored to be in your presence." The queen studied him for a long moment. Her eyes moved over him like he was an insect under a microscope. "Rise, human." He stood, keeping his eyes lowered. "Look at me." He raised his eyes. The queen's gaze was like being stared at by a star, bright and cold and infinitely old. "You are the one my daughter chases?" Yes, Your Majesty. She has given you gifts. You have returned them. She has invited you to royal functions. You have declined. She has sought your company every day for 3 weeks, and you have run from her like a prey animal fleeing a hunter." Do-hun said nothing. There was nothing to say. The queen leaned forward slightly. Her voice was soft but carried clearly across the vast room. "My daughter is beautiful by any species standard. She is intelligent, cultured, and kind. She is royalty of the most powerful empire in the known galaxy. She has shown you more favor than any human has ever received from our people." The queen paused. "So tell me, Park Do-hun of Earth, why do you run?" Do-hun stood very still. He could feel his heart beating in his chest. He could feel the sweat on his palms. He could feel the weight of the queen's attention pressing down on him like a physical force. He thought about lying. He thought about giving some diplomatic answer that would satisfy her and let him escape. He thought about what his captain would want him to say, but something in the queen's eyes told him that she would know if he lied, and lying to someone this powerful seemed like a very bad idea. So he took a deep breath. "Your Majesty," he said, "may I speak freely?" The queen's silver skin did not change, but something in her eyes shifted. Surprise, perhaps, or interest. "You may." Do-hun took another breath, and he began to tell her the truth. The throne room felt even larger now that Do-hun had been given permission to speak. The silence stretched out between him and the queen like a living thing, waiting to be filled. He thought about where to begin. How do you explain something to a being who has ruled an empire for 8 centuries? How do you make someone understand a feeling when they have never experienced it themselves? He decided to start with a question. "Your Majesty, in your culture, when someone of high status shows interest in someone of lower status, what is the expected response?" The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. She was not used to being questioned, but she answered. "The lower party is honored. They accept the attention with gratitude. They make themselves available. And if they do not want the attention, why would they not want it? Attention from royalty is the highest gift. It opens doors, it changes lives. It raises them above their station." Do-hun nodded slowly. "That is what I thought. And that, Your Majesty, is why I run." The queen's expression did not change, but her silence invited him to continue. "Among humans, we have a different view. We believe that every person, no matter how small or unimportant, has the right to choose who they spend time with. We call this right many things: consent, freedom, autonomy. But the core idea is the same. No one is owed another person's time. No one is owed another person's attention. No one is owed another person's heart. These things must be given freely, or they are worthless." The queen tilted her head. "Even if the one asking is more powerful?" "Especially if the one asking is more powerful." "Explain." Do-hun felt the fear in his stomach begin to transform into something else, something like courage. If he was going to die tonight, he might as well die speaking the truth. When someone powerful wants something from someone weak, the weak person has no real choice. They can say yes and give what is asked. Or they can say no and face consequences. Loss of work, loss of safety, loss of life. Either way, their answer is not free. It is forced. He paused to gather his thoughts. Your daughter is a princess. She has guards, wealth, influence, power. I am an engineer. I fix broken machines on a ship that is here only because your empire allows it to be. If I refuse her attention, what might happen? Will my captain be pressured to punish me? Will humanity's relationship with your empire suffer? Will I simply disappear one night and no one will ask questions? The queen's skin remained silver, but something flickered in her eyes. You believe my daughter would harm you? I believe she would not need to. The threat is in the gap between us, the gap in power, in status, in protection. Dohun's voice was steady now. When the princess appears at my workplace, I cannot tell her to leave. When she sends gifts, I cannot ignore them without risking offense. When she invites me to royal events, my own captain pressures me to accept. Every time she seeks my company, I have to calculate the cost of refusing. That is not attention, Your Majesty. That is pressure. The queen was very still. For the first time in centuries, she was hearing something she had not considered before. Your daughter is not cruel, Dohun continued. I can see that she is curious and kind in her own way, but she does not understand what it is like to be small, to be powerless, to have someone much stronger than you decide that they want something from you, and to know that you cannot truly say no. He met the queen's eyes directly. It was probably disrespectful. It was probably dangerous, but he needed her to understand. Among my people, we have a word for when someone with power pursues someone without power, ignoring their discomfort and their refusals. We call it harassment. Sometimes we call it worse things. It does not matter if the powerful person has good intentions. It does not matter if they believe they are offering a gift. What matters is that the other person cannot freely choose. Their yes is not real because their no is not safe. The queen spoke for the first time in minutes. You believe my daughter is harassing you. I believe your daughter does not realize what she is doing. She has never been told no. She has never had to ask permission for anything. She sees me as interesting, so she pursues me. She does not understand that her pursuit frightens me. Frightens you. The queen repeated the words slowly. A princess of my bloodline frightens you. Yes, Your Majesty, because I have no power, because I have no protection, because if she decides to take what she wants instead of asking for it, there is nothing I can do. Dohun's voice dropped. I am not stupid. I know what happens when powerful people want things from powerless people. I have seen it happen on Earth. I have seen it happen in space. The powerful take. The powerless survive if they are lucky. He took a breath. So I run. I run because that is the only power I have. The power to not be where she expects me to be. The power to refuse her gifts and her invitations and her attention. It is a small power, a weak power, but it is mine, and I will not give it up, even for a princess. The throne room was silent. The stars burned cold above them. The queen sat on her crystal throne and looked at the small human who had just told her things no one had dared to tell her in 800 years. Finally, she spoke. You speak as if you have experienced this before, this pressure from the powerful. Dohun's jaw tightened. I have. Tell me. It was not a request, but somehow it did not feel like a command either. It felt like an invitation from someone who truly wanted to understand. So Dohun told her. He told her about his first job, where his supervisor demanded that he work extra hours without pay. When he refused, he was fired. He told her about the company that promised training and advancement, but instead used him for labor and threw him away when he was used up. He told her about the man who owned the building where his mother lived, who raised the rent when she could not pay, who suggested other ways she could make up the difference, who smiled when she refused and raised the rent again. He told her about a lifetime of being small, of being weak, of watching powerful people take what they wanted and call it their right. I am not special, Dohun said, My story is the story of billions of humans. We are born with nothing, and we spend our lives fighting to keep what little we gain. The powerful do not ask us what we want. They tell us what we will give, and we give it because we have no choice. He looked at the queen. Your daughter looks at me and sees something interesting, something new, something she wants to understand, but she does not see me. She sees a puzzle, a toy, a thing to acquire. His voice was quiet but firm. I will not be acquired, Your Majesty. I would rather die. The last words hung in the air between them. Queen Yara sat in perfect silence. Her silver skin did not flicker. Her ancient eyes did not blink. She had heard many things in her long life. Pleas for mercy, declarations of war, confessions of love and hate, and everything in between. But she had never heard anything like this. A small, weak creature from a small, weak planet had stood before her and explained calmly and clearly why her daughter's attention was not a gift. It was a cage. And for the first time in 800 years, Queen Yara did not know what to say. The silence in the throne room lasted for what felt like hours. Do-hun stood before the queen, his heart pounding, waiting for judgment. He had said things that no human should say to a ruler of the galaxy. He had accused her daughter of behavior that, on Earth, would be considered wrong. He had challenged the very foundation of how Valorians treated those beneath them. He was almost certainly going to die. But Queen Yara did not call for guards. She did not order his execution. She did not even raise her voice. Instead, she did something that shocked Do-hun more than any punishment could have. She leaned back in her throne and closed her eyes. For a long moment, she simply sat there, ancient and still, like a statue carved from moonlight. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed in them. The cold, distant look was gone. In its place was something almost like uncertainty. In 3,000 years of Valorian history, she said slowly, no one has ever explained this to us. No one has ever said what you have said. Do-hun blinked. Your Majesty? We have conquered worlds. We have uplifted primitive species. We have brought order and civilization to chaos. And always we have believed that our attention was a gift, that other species should be grateful for our interest, that they should feel honored to serve us. She looked at her hands, spread on the arms of her throne. Her skin remained that calm, unchanging silver. Not once did we consider that our gift might feel like a chain to those who received it. Do-hun did not know what to say. He had expected anger. He had expected dismissal. He had not expected a queen to actually listen. I have watched you, Queen Yara continued, through the security systems. I have seen how you work, how you help others without being asked, how you eat alone, read alone, walk alone. You are a creature of solitude, not because you dislike others, but because you have learned that closeness to others brings risk. Do-hun's throat felt tight. Yes, Your Majesty. And when my daughter approached you, you saw not a princess offering friendship. You saw another powerful being who wanted something from you. Another person who would take what they wanted and leave you with nothing. Yes, the queen nodded slowly. I understand now, and I find myself in a strange position. I must thank you, Park Do-hun of Earth, for giving me knowledge that no one else has been brave enough to share. Do-hun stared at her. Thank me. You have shown me a failing in my empire, a blindness in my people. We have been so sure of our own greatness that we never stopped to ask if our gifts were wanted. She paused. You have also shown me a failing in my daughter. Her voice softened, losing some of its formal coldness. Nari is my youngest. She was born into absolute comfort. She has never wanted for anything. She has never been denied anything. I thought this was kindness. I thought I was giving her a life of ease and happiness. The queen's eyes met Do-hun's. I see now that I was giving her a life without understanding. She has never known what it means to have no power. She has never known what it means to be afraid of someone stronger. She has never known what it means to want something she cannot have. Do-hun thought about the princess, about her curious eyes and her changing skin, and her absolute certainty that he would eventually give her what she wanted. She is not cruel, Your Majesty. I truly believe that. No, she is not cruel. She is ignorant. And ignorance in one who holds power can be just as dangerous as cruelty. The queen sighed, and suddenly she looked tired. old, weighed down by centuries of decisions. I have ruled this empire for 800 years. I have made laws and waged wars and shaped the destiny of billions. But I failed to teach my own daughter the most basic lesson of leadership. What lesson is that? That power comes with responsibility. That those who can take must choose not to. That the true measure of strength is not in what we demand, but in what we protect. She stood from her throne. It was the first time she had moved since Do-hun entered the room, and he was struck by how tall she was, how graceful, how ancient and terrifying and beautiful all at once. She walked toward him, her steps silent on the polished floor. Do-hun forced himself not to step back. He stood his ground as the queen of the Valorian Empire approached until she was close enough to touch. Then she did something that made him forget to breathe. She bowed her head to him. It was not a deep bow. It was not the kind of bow a servant gives to a master. But it was a bow, a deliberate lowering of her head, an acknowledgement of something. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for teaching my daughter what I failed to teach, for having the courage to speak when silence would have been safer, for being strong in the only way you could be." Do-hun felt tears prick at his eyes. He did not know why. He had been prepared for death, for punishment, for dismissal. He had not been prepared for this. "Your Majesty, You will not be punished," the queen said, raising her head. "You will not be pressured. You will not be made to feel afraid. I give you my word, and my word has held this empire together for 8 centuries. Thank you, Your Majesty. There is one more thing." She studied his face. "My daughter will come to you tomorrow. She will have spoken with me. She will know what she has done wrong. What happens after that is your choice. You may refuse to see her. You may accept her apology and still choose to keep your distance. Or you may give her a chance to know you properly, the way humans know each other." Do-hun hesitated. "And if I refuse?" "Then you refuse. And nothing bad will happen to you or your ship or your people. That is what consent means, is it not? The freedom to say no without fear?" For the first time since entering the throne room, Do-hun smiled. It was a small smile, tired and uncertain, but real. "Yes, Your Majesty. That is exactly what it means." The queen nodded. "Then go, Park Do-hun. Return to your work and your quiet life, and know that you have done something tonight that warriors and diplomats and kings have failed to do." "What is that, Your Majesty?" "You have changed the Valorian Empire." She turned and walked back to her throne, her footsteps echoing in the vast room. At the base of the crystal seat, she paused and looked back at him. "One more thing. The word you used. Consent. We do not have this word in our language. There is no Valorian concept for the right to refuse the powerful. That seems like a gap in your vocabulary." The queen's silver skin flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been amusement. "Yes, it does." She sat back on her throne. "We will fix that. I will make sure of it." The doors behind Do-hun opened. The guards were waiting to escort him back. As he walked out of the throne room, Do-hun realized that his hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. He had just had a conversation with one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and he was still alive. More than that, she had listened. She had actually listened. He did not know what would happen tomorrow. He did not know if the princess would truly understand. He did not know if anything would really change. But as he walked back through the golden corridors toward the human section of the station, he felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt hope. After Do-hun left the throne room, Queen Yara sat alone in the darkness for a very long time. The stars turned slowly above her. The crystal throne hummed with quiet power. The vast, empty space seemed to press in on her, filled with the weight of everything the human had said. She thought about her empire. 3,000 years of conquest. 3,000 years of bringing civilization to primitive worlds. 3,000 years of Valorians walking into rooms and expecting everyone to bow, to serve, to be grateful for the honor of Valorian attention. How many species had felt what the human felt? How many had smiled and bowed and accepted gifts while inside they were screaming for escape? How many had been broken by Valorian kindness, crushed by Valorian generosity, destroyed by Valorian love? She did not know. She had never thought to ask. The queen raised her hand and looked at it. silver skin that had not changed color in 300 years. Perfect control over every emotion, perfect stillness in every situation. She had thought this was strength. Now she wondered if it was simply numbness. A chime announced a visitor. The queen composed herself and spoke. Enter. High Commander Tay walked into the throne room and knelt. Your Majesty, the human has been returned to his ship. Shall I arrange for monitoring? No. No, Your Majesty. The human is not to be watched, followed, or interfered with in any way. He is to be left in peace. Is that understood? Tay hesitated. The queen saw confusion in the slight shift of his dark blue skin. I understand, Your Majesty, but may I ask, what did he say to you? The queen considered the question. Tay had served her for 2 centuries. He was loyal, capable, and trusted. But he was also a product of Valorian culture. Would he understand what the human had explained? He told me the truth, she said finally, a truth we have been too proud to see. Tay waited, but she said nothing more. Your Majesty, shall I summon the princess? Yes, send her to me. And Tay? Your Majesty, what would you do if I ordered you to spend time with me? To attend my meals, join my walks, listen to my thoughts? Tay's skin shifted to purple with surprise. I would be honored, Your Majesty. It would be the highest privilege. Would you say no if you did not want to? The question hung in the air. Tay's skin flickered through several colors as he tried to process it. I do not understand the question, Your Majesty. Why would I say no to such an honor? The queen nodded slowly. That is the problem, Tay. You would never say no. Not because you do not want to, but because you cannot imagine that saying no is possible. She dismissed him with a wave. He left, still confused, still uncertain what he had done wrong. A short time later, Princess Nari entered the throne room. She walked with her usual grace, her skin a calm and confident gold. But as she approached the throne and saw her mother's expression, the gold began to fade to uncertain blue. Mother, you summoned me? Sit, Nari. There was a small seat below the throne, used for private conversations. Nari sat, her eyes searching her mother's face for clues. I spoke with the human tonight, the queen said. Nari's skin flickered with hope. Did he say why he keeps refusing me? Did he explain? He did. And now I will explain to you. The queen leaned forward. Do you know what you have been doing wrong, Nari? Wrong? The princess's skin shifted to defensive orange. I have done nothing wrong. I have been kind to him, generous. I have offered him my attention and my gifts. Any other species would be overwhelmed with gratitude. And what about what he wants? Nari paused. I want to know him. I want to understand humans. He is fascinating and different, and I asked what he wants, not what you want. The princess fell silent. Her skin moved through several colors as she tried to find an answer. I do not know what he wants, she admitted finally. I never asked. No, you did not. The queen's voice was not angry, but it was heavy with disappointment. You saw something interesting, and you pursued it. You sent gifts he did not request. You appeared at his workplace without invitation. You asked about his life, his world, his people, but you never asked if he wanted to share those things with you. But I am a princess. When I show interest, it is a gift. It opens doors for him. It raises his status. And if he does not want those doors opened, if he does not want his status raised, if he simply wants to be left alone? Nari's skin turned pale. Then he... She stopped. For the first time in her life, she faced a question she could not answer. The queen watched her daughter struggle with thoughts that had never occurred to her before. It was painful to watch, like seeing someone discover that the ground they had stood on their entire life was actually thin ice over a deep, dark ocean. The human explained something to me, the queen said gently, a concept that does not exist in our language. He called it consent. Consent? The right to say no, the right to refuse attention, even from those more powerful. The right to be asked instead of told. The queen paused. When you pursued him, you never asked if he wanted to be pursued. You assumed your attention was a gift, but to him it felt like a trap, like pressure, like something he could not escape. Nari's skin had faded to a pale, shocked white. I frightened him? Yes, but I never threatened him. I never demanded anything. I was kind. You were kind like a storm is kind when it waters the fields. You did not mean to cause damage, but you did not stop to ask if the fields wanted rain. The princess sat in silence, her skin cycling through colors that had no names. Shame, confusion, horror, understanding. I did not see, she whispered. I did not see what I was doing. No, you did not, because no one ever taught you to look. The queen reached out and touched her daughter's cheek. I am as much to blame as you. I gave you everything you ever wanted. I never taught you what it meant to want something you could not have. I never taught you to ask permission before taking. Nari's eyes filled with tears. Valorians rarely cried. Tears were considered a sign of weakness, of loss of control, but the princess did not try to stop them. What do I do, mother? How do I fix this? You cannot fix what has been done. You can only do better in the future. The queen wiped her daughter's tears away with a gentle hand. Tomorrow you will go to him. You will apologize, not for your feelings but for your actions. And then you will give him what no Valorian has ever given anyone before. What is that? A choice, a real choice, with no pressure, no consequences, no expectations. You will ask if he is willing to know you, and you will accept whatever answer he gives. Nari took a shaky breath. And if he says no, then you will walk away, and you will respect his decision, and you will not pursue him again. Even if I still want to know him, especially then. The queen sat back on her throne. That is what consent means, Nari. Wanting something and not taking it because the other person does not want to give it. It is the hardest lesson of power, and it is the one lesson I never taught you. The princess bowed her head. Her skin had settled into a soft, sad gray. I understand, mother. I will go to him tomorrow. I will apologize, and I will ask. Good. The queen's voice softened. And Nari, whatever happens, know that I am proud of you. It takes courage to see your own mistakes. It takes even more courage to try to correct them. Nari looked up at her mother with eyes that were still wet with tears. I never wanted to hurt him. I know, my child, I know. The princess rose and left the throne room, her steps slower and heavier than when she had arrived. The queen watched her go, then turned her eyes back to the stars. Somewhere out there, on a small human ship, an engineer was probably lying awake wondering what would happen next. Tomorrow he would find out, and so would the entire galaxy. He lay in his small bed, staring at the metal ceiling of his quarters, replaying the conversation with the queen over and over in his mind. Had he really said those things? Had she really listened? Had she really bowed her head to him? It seemed impossible, like a dream that would fade in the morning light. But morning came, and it was not a dream. He went about his duties as usual. There was a filtration system that needed attention on Deck 7. There was a wiring problem in the cargo bay. There was always something that needed fixing. Dahun found comfort in the work. It was simple. It was honest. It made sense in a way that conversations with alien queens did not. He was elbow deep in a control panel when he heard footsteps behind him. Light and graceful, like water over stones. His hands froze. Park Dohun. He turned slowly. Princess Nari stood a few meters away, her hands folded in front of her. Her skin was a pale, uncertain shade of gray that he had never seen before. She did not step closer. She did not smile. She simply stood there, waiting. Your Highness, Dohun said carefully, I spoke with my mother last night. Nari's voice was quiet, none of its usual confidence present. She told me what you said, about consent, about power, about what I was doing to you. Dohun said nothing. He waited. I came to apologize. The princess took a breath. I did not understand. In my culture, when someone of high status shows interest in someone of lower status, it is always welcome. It is always an honor. I thought I was giving you a gift. I thought you were playing games with me, being coy, making me work for your attention. Her skin shifted to a darker shade of gray. I did not realize I was scaring you. I did not realize that my presence felt like pressure. I did not realize that my gifts felt like chains. She paused, and Do-hoon saw something glisten in her eyes. I am sorry. Truly sorry. I never meant to cause you harm. Do-hoon looked at her. At this princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, standing before him with tears in her eyes and shame on her skin. He believed her. Despite everything, he believed she had not understood. She was not cruel. She had simply been blind. I accept your apology, he said. Some of the tension went out of Nari's shoulders. Thank you. But I need to know something, Do-hoon continued. Why? Why me? Of all the diplomats and scientists and important people on this station, why did you focus on an engineer who fixes broken machines? Nari considered the question. Her skin shifted slowly to a thoughtful blue. Because you were real, she said finally. Everyone else I meet is performing. They smile and bow and say what they think I want to hear. They calculate every word, every gesture. But you just talked to me. That first day when I found you in the corridor, you did not try to impress me. You answered my questions honestly, and then you went back to your work. She looked at her hands. No one has ever done that before. No one has ever treated me like a normal person instead of a prize to be won. I found it fascinating, refreshing. I wanted more of it. She laughed softly, sadly. I wanted it so much that I did not stop to ask if you wanted to give it. Do-hoon felt something shift in his chest. Some of the fear and suspicion that had been living there for weeks began to loosen. Your Highness, Nari, she said. Please, if we are going to talk honestly, call me Nari. He hesitated, then nodded. Nari, I understand why you did what you did, and I appreciate that you came here to apologize. That took courage. It took my mother explaining things very clearly, Nari admitted. I am not sure I would have understood otherwise. That is still more than most people would do. They stood in silence for a moment. The ship hummed around them. Somewhere distant, someone laughed. My mother said I should ask you something, Nari said, and that I should accept whatever answer you give. Do-hoon felt his heart beat faster. Ask. Nari looked at him directly, her skin shifting to a soft, uncertain violet. Park Do-hoon, if I promise to ask before appearing in your life, if I promise to accept no as an answer, if I promise to treat you as a person instead of a puzzle to solve. She paused. Would you be willing to share a meal with me? Not as a princess and an engineer, just as two people who might become friends? Do-hoon considered the question. A week ago, he would have said no. He would have politely refused and hoped she would leave him alone. The fear was still there, buried deep, whispering warnings about powerful people and their dangerous interest. But something had changed. This princess had listened to her mother. She had examined her own behavior. She had come to him and apologized without making excuses. She was standing before him now, asking instead of assuming, respecting instead of demanding. That was more than most humans had ever done for him. I will think about it, he said. Nari blinked. Surprise flickered across her features. You will think about it? Yes, I will consider your offer, and I will give you an answer when I am ready. Do-hoon allowed himself a small smile. That is how it works. You ask, you wait, you accept the answer. Nari stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly a smile spread across her face. It was different from her usual smile. There was no expectation in it, no certainty. It was the smile of someone learning something new. I will wait, she said, however long it takes. She turned and walked away, her steps lighter than when she had arrived. Do-hoon watched her go. Then he turned back to his work. 3 days later, he found Nari in the corridor again. She did not approach. She simply stood at a distance and nodded politely before continuing on her way. He appreciated that. 5 days after that, he sent a message to her quarters. 3 words. Tomorrow. Lunch. Here. She arrived exactly on time, carrying nothing, expecting nothing. They ate simple human food in a small break room, and they talked about nothing important. Weather on different planets, strange foods they had tried, bad jokes that did not translate well. It was awkward, it was uncertain, but it was a start. The encounter between Park Do-hun and the Valorian royal family became quietly legendary among human diplomats. Not because of romance or scandal, but because of what it represented. A princess who learned to ask, a queen who learned to listen, an empire that discovered a word it had never known it needed: consent. The Valorians began to change after that, slowly, imperfectly. But in their new treaties with other species, a new clause appeared, a guarantee that attention from Valorians would be offered, not imposed, that gifts could be refused without consequence, that no species, no matter how small or weak, was obligated to accept the interest of the powerful. Some called it the Do-hun Clause. Others called it the human principle. Whatever they called it, it changed things. And on the horizon's edge, life went on. Do-hun continued his work. He fixed broken machines and kept the ship running. He ate his meals quietly and read his books in peace. Sometimes, a princess with shifting blue skin would send him a message asking if he had time for tea. Sometimes he said yes. Other times he said no, and she accepted it with grace. They were not lovers. They were not even close friends. They were something new, something that did not have a word in either of their languages. They were two people who had chosen to know each other, and that in the end was the most human thing of all. Years later, when historians wrote about humanity's first contact with the Valorian Empire, they would note something curious. The galaxy had expected humans to bring technology, or art, or philosophy. They had expected trade goods and cultural exchange, and the usual things that new species offered. Instead, humans brought a single idea: the idea that everyone, no matter how small, had the right to say no. It was a small thing, a simple thing, but it changed everything. And it all started with an engineer who ran away from a princess and a queen who asked him why.